make some sense of it all. But I can see it makes no sense at all. Is it cool to go to sleep on the floor? 'Cause I don't think that I can take anymore. Clowns to the left of me, jokers to the right. Here I am, stuck in the middle with you.
Good morning, everyone. Lots going on as usual. Today's Wednesday, June 25th, 2025, and police are raiding homes in Germany for online hate, right? If the people have targeted politicians or if they've done mean things online, I guess Germany is saying, no more, you can't do any of that. And so I'll show that to you. And people are saying, how long until that happens in Canada? We have legal protections that prevent that for now. But we'll see, because they're trying to water them down, and they have successfully watered them down in places like England, United Kingdom, Germany, United States to a degree, although people aren't going to jail for tweets yet. But who knows, right? And they are trying to pass laws in Canada, the Online Harms Act, that will lead to this kind of raid. And so that's very bad news. It's not good news at all. AI collapses the cost of authoritarianism. And yes, I think that that's probably true. And it's a concerning hypothesis. One we might find out what the answer in real life is. One we might get to test. Do not question the success of the Iranian bombing campaign, Donald Trump says, and he's not talking to me, he's talking to the major newspapers, but he says, have faith in your president. So we'll see. And Alberta wants to build pipelines, and we'll see if they can get it. Alberta Danielle Smith had a press conference yesterday talking about pipelines and being able to encourage private investment and private building of pipelines rather than having government build pipelines. And so the difference between what Danielle Smith thinks and Mark Carney thinks and how to get these pipelines built. And Danielle Smith is saying Mark Carney's new system is being implemented and we've got to test it as soon as possible. So let's put some pressure in those lines, right? So she says, let's get to it. And so she wants a pipeline built toot to suite. And that's very interesting. So there's lots to get to. Let's get to it. First, we're starting with speech because, man, Dacey's media is the one who is sharing this, and he says, how long do you think this is going to take before it starts happening in Canada? And Disclosed TV is reporting German police today raided the homes of 170 citizens for allegedly spreading hate or insulting politicians on the internet. And Germans increasingly feel that they can no longer express their opinions freely, as recent surveys have shown. Yeah, well, that's happening across the West. And will we whistle past the graveyard as they implement communism in the West? Do you think that the public will just allow that, or even more, cheer that on? Here's the AI guy talking about how AI reduces the cost of authoritarianism to near zero. You just program your AI and then it takes care of it, right? Here's this guy.
Historically, being an authoritarian regime was actually quite costly to spy on everybody and know what everybody's saying. With AI, it collapses the cost of authoritarianism, right? So you could have a camera up there that is able to know us by our faces, exactly what we're saying. AI massively reduces the cost, basically collapses the marginal cost of authoritarianism. If we don't have our own data centers with these GPUs, low energy prices to be able to power them, will, number one, be totally open to cyber attacks. My view is it's obvious from what Trump is doing that they're becoming more protectionist. And because Britain is focused, despite being less than 1% of global emissions and China producing 4.7 billion tons of coal last year, Mad Ed Miliband's running around, trying to make us basically a poor country by having all these high energy costs. It means it is totally economically inept to try to open these data centers in the UK. So we should be investing heavily in building up that capability, as a form of defense, but also, unlike nuclear weapons, there is a positive use for these things. That's something that I think is A, not being talked about, B, has the prospect to totally change the face of society. And politicians are, to say that they're asleep at the wheel would be being kind.
Well, I don't think they're asleep at the wheel. I think they're encouraging. I think they think that that's power. If you have control of the AI bot that's monitoring and censoring your authoritarian regime, then you think that you get to run it, right? So, but usually that doesn't actually come to fruition. I think that the thought experiment, what he's talking about is this AI collapsing the cost of this authoritarian regime. And isn't that interesting? And we don't have countermeasures at all. And all of that's accurate. And our government is supposed to work for us. But I think it's pretty clear that the government doesn't work for us, nor does it work, nor do the courts, nor do the police. And so we're moving into quite an interesting period of time where either we go along with the authoritarian state or the public reasserts itself as the real power behind all of this. And really, we are one taxpayer. It's you and me, right? That's it. But fundamentally, it's very, very interesting because up until a certain point, most people will be willing to let it go. So will we continue and allow AI to completely take over and dominate us? I don't know. Here's Good Morning Britain. They say Reform UK's Deputy Leader Richard Tice will present a bill to the Commons today enabling public appeals against prison sentences that are perceived as being too harsh or too lenient. It will be called Lucy's Bill, named after Lucy Connolly, who's serving a 31-month sentence for inciting racial hatred in a social media post after the Southport attacks. That's not true. She urged her followers to set fire to hotels housing asylum seekers. That's not true. And people are pointing out that that's not true. Dead Ferret says, no, she didn't. She said, for all I care. She didn't incite anybody. She didn't urge her followers, and she deleted the post. So the whole thing is pretty wild that they're reporting it this way. All of this is to say, if you think that the media will be on your side, they can't possibly arrest this person. He's just blah, right? He's just an innocent guy who's just minding his own business. And he's saying things on the internet, right? That's it. Arrested. Is the media going to champion you? No, they're going to throw you under the bus like they're throwing Lucy under the bus right here. So it's interesting to me to watch all of this unfold. How long will we let it go on? It seems like longer than anybody's comfortable with at this point in time. Let's talk about the EU and Mark Carney. And here is Mark Nixon. He's responding to Ryan. And Ryan says, one would have to be a fool to think Europe, who's already in trouble, will make up for what the US provides Canada in trade. And Mark says, we cannot move Canada across the Atlantic. We are geographically married to the United States, regardless of what Mark Carney says. So yeah, Mark Carney had this meeting yesterday with EU. They've put out a joint statement. It's all, all official and stuff. But the reality is, if you have a client that's worth the amount of money that the United States is worth, and then another client who's worth the amount of money that Europe's worth, you take care of the US client, and the EU client, not as much, right? But apparently we're putting all our eggs in the EU client now, and the US is dead to us. It's a very, very risky move, although Carney was put here to do just this. Here's Mark Carney and Ursula von der Leyen, I believe.
Very, very warm welcome to this EU-Canada summit. You're here among friends. That is very important to us. We have an excellent partnership, two strong democracies bound by historic ties and connected by a trade partnership that is dynamic, fair and open through CETA. I think it is time to go to the next level, to step up the intensity of our partnership. We do not only want to reaffirm today our partnership and friendship, but also reshape it. And there are lots of topics, from security of supply chains to critical raw materials, from digital services to artificial intelligence. We will sign a security and defense partnership agreement. This is the most comprehensive we've ever concluded. So the short message is, we know we can count on you and you can count on us. Very, very warm welcome.
I don't know. I don't think I trust any of them, at all. At all. Dan says climate fanaticism and overwrought alarmism will accelerate Canada's decline. Carney's attempting to use the U.S., for which 80% of our trade is based, as a pretext to double down on net zero policies that will do untold economic and political damage to Canada. And so here's the communique, and it's a little long and wordy. I can't get through all of this. There's so much. So the link is here, but it's not good. It's not that prosperous. Hey, we've struck a trade deal and this company's coming in and it's going to create 500,000 jobs and it's $1 trillion deal. That's not those kind of announcements. It's wordy and complicated. And fundamentally, it boils down to, we're going to tax you more for your safety, comrade. Right? And so I feel like these people are not working for us. BC Barracuda says, don't you love when they say the quiet part out loud? And this is just, we've seen this yesterday, but this is underlining Mark Carney's affinity for the New World Order and he's talking about, this new world order. So here's Mark Carney using all the new world ordery buzzwords.
We might say even a hinge moment of history, a world that's more dangerous and divided, a time where the rules-based international, the global order, rules-based global order is under threat, in a time when technological change is accelerating. And we really have two choices as a jurisdiction, as a country in this circumstance. We can nostalgically look back and long for the old order to somehow return, or we can build a new one with purpose and partnership. And as the most European of the non-European countries, Canada looks first to the European Union.
That's not true. And I don't even know what he means by the most European of the non-European countries. Honestly, ridiculous. What a ridiculous thing to say. Table Salt says Canada exports to the United States $434 billion. Canada exports to the EU $34 billion. We would have to increase trade with the EU by 15% every year for 18 years, which will not happen, to make up for the US trade. And it wouldn't be equal for 18 years. This plan makes no sense. This plan is a bad plan. It's a bad plan that makes no sense. And nobody is calling Carney out on this. They're all the people who are globalists in charge of everything around the world are blowing sunshine up each other's bums. Oh, well, you could count on us and we could count on you. Yeah, I'm sure. Great. Except that you're across an entire ocean and it doesn't make any sense. The plan doesn't make sense. It's insane, right? Please stop play acting because this is serious and people's lives are in the balance, all right? Peter says the British government is now warning people that people must prepare for a wartime scenario on British soil. What's going on? That's a good question. It is a very good question. Keir Starmer, all of the things that are happening, it seems to be moving us in a specific direction and for no reason. There's no real reason for all of this. They're just saying, it'd be a darn shame if a war broke out, and everybody says, yeah, nobody wants war, but they keep pushing us in that direction. Why? I don't know. Because they want a war. They have to reset the currency. The currency is running out and they know it, and they can't paper over it forever. And they're trying to either move us into a digital currency or a war. And either one will work for them because it resets the currency. Anyway, here's Polyev. I think this is interesting. We'll talk about the invasion briefly, and then we will go into our grab bag of governance. And I have a meeting this morning and I have to go, which is why the show is so early today. But I think I'm just going to do the whole show. I'm just going to do all of it because I think that it's going to be 40 minutes. But you watch, I'll do an entire hour. Oh, well, we'll figure it out. Back to this. So we'll do our grab bag of governance now. Or no, this is the invasion stuff before the grab bag of governance. But this is Polyev talking about and adding more meat to kind of what he was not saying during the election, and talking about immigration, talking about population, talking about how you need to gear the population to the amount of services and the amount of housing and so on that you've got. And this topic, he didn't really explore all that much during the election. It was a lot more sloganeering. Had he spoken about it more, maybe that would have worked better for him, although the elections are rigged and I think that they screwed him over anyway. But it's interesting that this topic that seemed off the table during the election is now on the table when there's no chance of an election for whatever reason, because a confidence vote is out of the question too. Anyway, here's Pierre Polyev talking about negative population growth in Canada. Demigration, people who are supposed to be leaving because their visas are up, but aren't leaving for whatever reason. Anyway, here's Pierre Polyev.
Have a lot of people who are supposed to be leaving in the next sort of year. They are international students and temporary foreign workers on temporary visas that are going to run out.
Yes.
So we're going to need more people to leave than to come for the next several years. And that means even having negative population growth in that time period. And then after that, we have to have a hard rule. And I proposed this a long time ago, that the growth in the housing stock, job market, and availability of doctors must always be higher than the growth in population. And you can set that by the levels plan. There's something called the levels plan where the government actually sits down and pencils out how many people are going to be allowed to come in, how much our population is going to be allowed to grow. And we need to basically say, well, if we grew the number of doctors by this much, and we grew the number of homes by this much, and the number of jobs by this much, well, the population can only grow this much, because we can't overload any of those systems for our own people, or it's not fair for the people who come. Yes. So it's actually a false promise if we invite people here and then they have no place to live and they can't go to a hospital when they get sick.
What about the false promise for the people who live here already, who, you know, paid into the system and built the hospitals and the communities and everything like that? What about those people? He's right. We can't overload the system. And further, we are in a situation where if we took the immigration down to zero, our economy would tank. I very strongly believe that. And so it's interesting that we're just scratching the surface of talking about this, and we're really not solving any problems, right? Like, this is obvious and step one, and we need 5 or 6 more steps in order to start even fixing the problem. But I don't think we're getting there. Here's Britain First. And they say Britain First visits luxury flats given to illegal migrants in Essex. A building filled with luxury flats has been given to illegal immigrant men in the town of Chelmsford, Essex. When Britain first arrived, we found male migrants from India and Africa. So this is expensive stuff being given out to foreigners for whatever reason. Here we go.
Hello, sir.
Hi.
How you doing?
How are you?
What country are you from, sir?
No. You from Eritrea?
Pardon? Eritrea?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. All right, thank you. This place is heaving with illegal migrants. You see the migrants signing in here? Foreign security again. Absolute joke. This is what your taxes are paying for. Doesn't matter if you're struggling to pay your bills, rising energy costs. This is what your taxes are paying for. Hello, sir.
Yeah, hello.
Hello. Are you staying here?
Yes. No.
What country are you from?
India.
India?
Yeah.
Oh, right. This is the building. Now, this place was marketed as luxury flats until the Home Office took it over and filled it with illegal migrants. This is one of the things that annoys me about this particular facility. Luxury flats in the heart of Chelmsford, and directly opposite a beautiful English Christian church. And this place is filled up with primarily Muslim asylum seekers, illegal migrants, whatever you want to call them.
Right. So you see the shape of what is going on. It's happening pretty much everywhere. So that's very interesting to me. Natalie says, oh, you thought they were going to stop at renaming Dundas Square. No. The TTC board took 10 seconds. That's not an exaggeration, according to Natalie. 10 seconds to approve TTC 6.5 revised station naming policy to remove colonial era names to be more aligned with DEI. Think about that. The TTC approved spending millions of dollars to replace subway station names, which will require signs on all trains, subway stations, maps, etc., instead of prioritizing inefficiencies, trains, buses, bus delays, transit safety, violence, and homelessness on subways. Then the TTC will cry about funding. That's your tax dollars for you. So communists erase history, and that is what they do. And if you think, or if you don't understand that going and renaming all the train stations in Toronto is erasing history or is not erasing history, I've got news for you. It's erasing history. That's exactly what they're doing. They're doing their best to erase history, to erase, quote, colonialism. And again, if we allow this, then we're helping our own destruction. We're aiding them in our own destruction. And there are some people out there who genuinely are helping them in the destruction because they've been brainwashed to thinking that colonialism is bad or all of this nonsense that's being taught in schools and has been taught in schools for years now. People believe it, and then they show up in marches and blah, 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 and then want to name Dundas Square after some mullah or something like that. You wonder how Iran became how it is, right? It's very interesting because before 1979, it wasn't like that. Neil says, let's move into our grab bag of governance. And we're talking about, I often talk about how the mayors work for Bloomberg, how the mayors do what Bloomberg says, and they use ego inflation as a way to as a way to access these people and to get them to do what they want, right? Oh, you're so good. You're a mayor. You have such a responsibility. You have to help your citizens avert climate change, right? And so on and so forth. And so they fly them out. They feed them. They give them alcohol. They give them a big party. They do big dinners. They have speeches. And this makes you feel important. And you come back with full of piss and vinegar, ready to, fight for the climate or something like that. And so in that way, they don't work for you. They work for the people who are giving them dinners and booze and making them feel important, right? Regardless of, they had to come and earn your trust and campaign for you and all the rest. They still work for them. So Neil says, Mayor of London, flying to Rio de Janeiro to lecture us about carbon emissions. I'm sure it'll be enlightening. The C40 Cities says, this November on the eve of COP30, the mayors of London and Rio de Janeiro will bring together cities delivering urgent, fair, and ambitious climate action. In Rio de Janeiro, C40 mayors will highlight bold local solutions, mobilize climate finance, align local action with global goals. From tripling renewable energy by 2030 to improving public health and cutting emissions. The summit is part of the COP30 Local Leaders Forum, co-hosted by Bloomberg and the COP30 Brazil presidency. Find out more at COP30. So the COP40 Mayors Summit 2025, where all the mayors go to Rio de Janeiro. Man, wouldn't that be nice? You're a mayor and you leave your constituents to go down to Rio de Janeiro to learn about how you can save the climate. Go fly down to Rio de Janeiro and learn how to save the climate, guys. Great. So they don't work for us. They work for somebody else, Bloomberg in this case. Pretty wild stuff. Here's Danielle Smith, and she says, Albertans have long had enough of Ottawa's economic attacks on our province and know it's time to take a stand. That's why today I'm launching the Alberta Next panel. Our province has contributed immensely to the prosperity of this country, yet Ottawa continues to attack our economy, abuse Alberta taxpayers with unfair equalization and federal transfers, and destructively interfere in multiple areas of provincial jurisdiction, from resource development to environmental policy to childcare to healthcare. The status quo threatens our province's economic future and way of life. We owe it all to all Albertans and future generations to address and solve this challenge without delay. The Alberta Next panel is a province-wide series of in-person and virtual town halls where your voice, your ideas, and your values will help shape Alberta's road ahead. The panel gives you a seat at the table too. Speak directly with government and industry leaders, constitutional scholars, and policy experts. Explore ideas for Alberta to assess or to assert our constitutional rights to prosper and become an equal partner in Confederation, discuss how we can protect Alberta from outside economic attacks going forward, and when the panel has finished its work, it will recommend which ideas should be put to the people of Alberta for a referendum vote in 2026. Visit alberta.ca/next. Get involved, learn more, have your say. And people are saying this is a poor counter to the Alberta separatist movement. Jeffrey Rath has come out kind of, I think, with criticism of this, saying it's half measures and we need to do more than that. Calgary guy says we don't need talking, we need action. It's another committee. Let's discuss how we can make things better. It's like, well, we can make things better with this move here. This one move right here, I'll 10x at anything you're doing. This move, as Alex Hermosi says, will make that irrelevant, right? It doesn't matter anymore after you do this. So we don't need to talk like that anymore after we do this. And that's what Danielle Smith's missing, right? And we don't need talking, we need action, says Calgary guy. I suggest you appoint an independence readiness minister today. Will you be remembered like Peter Lougheed and Ralph Klein, or forgotten like Ed Stelmach or Alison Redford? Be bold. Well, yeah. So that'll be interesting. But fundamentally, Danielle Smith works for the United Canada idea. And so she will not move forward meaningfully with any kind of referendum or any kind of separatist stuff. I don't think that she'll be on board for that. So it'd be interesting if she was. Here is CBC Watcher, and here is Danielle Smith. This is like a 5-minute thing. So I've just got it in the middle here. She's talking about building pipelines and having private groups come forward to build the pipelines. And she says that we're moving on it and things are moving, and we need to test Carney's new system. Here we go.
I'll answer the first one, or the last one first, is because we've been in active conversations with many pipeline companies, and I feel like we're pretty close to having either one or a consortium come forward. And so I would hope that that would happen very soon, because we need to send a signal to Albertans very soon and test the new process the Prime Minister is putting forward. This can't be a years-long process. That's why we want to get underway very quickly. So we'll have more to say once that becomes available. And then the first question you had.
Revenue certainty, contracts.
Oh, well, we don't love getting involved in the private sector. We do on occasion when we feel like there's a need to de-risk a project. The ways in which we try to de-risk a project are through things like refundable capital expenses. That's what our ASIP grant is built on, is the Alberta Carbon Capture Incentive Program. So once a project is built, we would then rebate 12% of the capital cost associated with that. We're in the process of talking about a new way of recycling the tier revenues. As you may know,
she's getting off topic there, but fundamentally, she's saying we need to test this system as fast and as soon as possible, and we need to have as robust a test as possible, and this is what we're going to do. And so we'll see how this all works. I think C5 is going to play into all this as well. So I think Carney's going to hold until C5 is passed, and then he's going to unveil what he thinks he can do with C5 and say, this provincial law doesn't matter, this thing doesn't matter, we have to get this solar something or other built. And I think it's gonna. I think he's gonna try and take control of the province's natural resources through C5. But I could be wrong. Hope I'm wrong about it. Blacklocks reporter says Bill C5 says cabinet can use any criteria it feels like to fast track projects. If Stephen Harper wrote this bill, the Toronto Star would be burning police cars. Says Blacklocks reporter. So that's funny. And he's doing a podcast. Here is Tim. And he's responding to Dave Eby. Dave Eby says communities across Canada are facing violence and extortion from organized crime groups. No one should feel unsafe in their own home. We're asking the federal government to designate these criminals as terrorist entities so police have additional tools to keep people safe. They're not terrorist entities. And Tim says organized crime groups aren't terrorists. They're not politically motivated. If you want to combat organized crime, bring in RICO-type legislation, tougher sentences, spend more on policing and prosecutions, seek constitutional amendments where such are reasonable and necessary, etc. Yeah, and I mean, what we've been doing for rule of law in Canada has been absolutely watering it down and destroying it. It doesn't exist anymore in Canada, which is sad. So, not great, right? Not very good. And what's the fix? I don't think what Dave Eby is suggesting, designating organized crime groups as terrorists, is the fix. I think probably stopping the full-blown invasion of the country and having organized crime groups set up in a country that has open borders like ours would be a better fix, personally. Not turning a blind eye to money laundering and Senate being involved, and I think government too being involved in the money laundering scheme, the Vancouver method, so on and so forth. That would maybe work, but that's not happening. That's not even on the table. They want to just designate them as terrorists. Okay. You have tools. You could arrest these people for all sorts of things, but they're not doing any of that. So that's notable, right? Aaron Gunn, MP Aaron Gunn, says this is totally unacceptable that drug use propaganda is being distributed at school events on Vancouver Island to students as young as 10 years old. Appreciate that the school district is taking action, but garbage like this cannot be allowed to happen. Good coverage by Czech News. So they're handing out drug paraphernalia to kids. Why? They use it to indoctrinate the kids. They use it to move the kids into being open to all of the other woke nonsense that they'll be introduced to later. The food professor is talking about food inflation. He says the latest G7 food inflation from lowest to highest: France at 1.3, United States at 2.9, Germany at 3.3, Canada at 3.4, Italy 3.6, United Kingdom 4.4, Japan 6.3. Canada remains above the G7 average. So that's interesting as well. The food professor says food inflation is still outpacing general inflation across the G7, but some more than others. Gap between food inflation and overall inflation. In Canada, it's 1.7%. So higher. Inflation is, I thought it was 2% in Canada at this point in time, but maybe I'm wrong about that because those numbers don't match. 3.4, 1.7. Yeah. Anyway, regardless, all of the money matters, and it's nickels and dimes at this point in time, right? But the food prices are more expensive when you go to the grocery store these days. So, and although at the same time, I can still find great deals for a lot of foods. So I don't know what to make of that. Juno News says the Carney government is walking back its promise to grant military personnel an immediate 20% raise, and instead is now looking into a combination of approaches. So great. A combination of approaches for what? They've taken pensions, like they've reduced pensions and reduced all sorts of. There was a structured package change under the Harper years that was supposed to be better, but was remarkably worse. And there's all sorts of classifications of if you are a veteran and you're trying to access services. If you're a veteran from before, 2000, then you have these kind of services. And if you're a veteran before 2005, then you have these kind of services. And if you're a veteran before 2010, but after 2005, then you have these services, right? And if you're a veteran, and it's weird how it does that, and it's all like piecemeal. It seems really piecemeal. So having a whole combination of approaches seems like a way to confuse people and sell them out on getting less for their time served. And I don't think that's great, but that's on brand for Canada. Like I don't think we take care of I don't think we take care of our military very well. And I think that we should probably take care of them better. Look at this. We're at half an hour and I've easily got half an hour left. So I didn't expect the show to be this long today. That's all right. I don't have time to do the post-production. That's the problem. After the show's done, I have to go and I still have like 20 minutes of stuff to do. And then if I do post-production, that's 20 minutes of stuff to do plus 20 minutes post-production. So I'm just going to do the quick post-production and not cut the show up. So right now is when I would probably be cutting the show for the stream off and everything like that. But I'm just going to keep going. So I hope everybody enjoys. So here's Tom Quiggin, and he's talking about our health and our public health agency's new president. And he says the new head of the Canadian Public Health Agency does not look at all healthy. It's true. She doesn't. Holly Doan says Public Health Agency's new $296,000 a year president is the fifth in 5 years. Appointment of Nancy Hamzawi. I think she'd probably be mad that I called her Hamowitz. Follows admission of pandemic mismanagement and naivete or incompetence in hiring of suspected Chinese spies at the Winnipeg lab. Great. And she looks terribly unhealthy. Here is Holly Doan. If there was a food truck that hired 5 managers in 5 years, you'd say, wow, that's shambolic. I think that you'd be shoehorning shambolic in, right? Like that's a weird word. That's kind of a strange word, especially if you're talking about food truck managers. The public health president, now that's shambolic if you've got 5 in 5 years, but I don't know about food trucks, man. It's hard to keep those things staffed. Apparently, especially if you can't import illegals. Dan says, America's top health official. Here's RFK Jr. Okay. The dude's more ripped than I am. Like, what's going on? And Dean says Canada's top health official. And she's got more chins than, well, I mean, me. So she's got she's got double chins. So there you go. And so she's not very healthy. Okay. And I can't even see her hair because, well, there you go. Melissa says, I'm not okay with 2 things. 1, Muslims being in any position of power in Canada. 2, COVID-compliant scientists having a say in what is healthy for us. 3, never mind, what could possibly go wrong here? So this person, who's now the president, says, throughout my career, I've had the honor and privilege to work with Canadian scientists from coast to coast to coast with partners around the globe, bringing forward world-leading science to inform policies and programs on global challenges like COVID-19 and climate change. This person doesn't work for us either, I think. So she is on board with what's going on globally, and she's excited to craft policies for what's going on globally, like climate change. And that's communism. It's global communism. And the whole global problem of climate change, the whole global problem of COVID is designed to make the world think that we have to have a global solution. And the only way to have a global solution is to have a global government. But we already do have a global government. You're not out of the system if you go from Canada to England or Canada to Australia or Canada to the United States. You might be out of the system if you go to a country that's Eastern, right? But then you're politically isolated. You can't speak the language. You can't engage in the politics there. You can't say, well, I think we should do this and not this. And here also, you can't do that, right? We're disenfranchised. We're not part of the system. They just leech off of us. They take from us to pay people like this to tell us how we should be healthy. Really? This woman should be telling me how to be healthy? Are you kidding me? Like, no, thanks very much. I'm going to eat bacon. It's going to happen. So the whole thing is very, very concerning. Concerning is one word. Bruce has said, I've compiled the top 10 list of the biggest, most recent drug busts in Canada. There seems to be a pattern. There does. Bruce says, June 12th, 25, big Blue Water Bridge, 187 kilograms of cocaine. And the person who was arrested, his last name is Singh. June 12th, Peel region, undisclosed drug amount, and the guy's name, two guys' name, both Singh. Third, I guess number 3, 2025, it doesn't have a date. 479 kilograms, $47 million. Gurpreet Singh, September 23, 50 kilograms of cocaine. Jaspal Singh, February 15th, 25. Ravinder Singh, $12 million in drugs. March 25, 80 kilograms of fentanyl, $8 million in drugs. Harpreet Singh, right? There's a pattern here, and it's very, very clear. However, the officials in Canada will say, oh, well, I can't see the pattern. If you see that pattern, it's racist or something like that. So, and he's got his sources here as well, just in case you're interested. So very interesting stuff going on there. We seem to be the Breaking Bad of countries, and collectively the society are the wife. We're not read in on the whole thing yet, right? In the early episodes, the wife who's confused about what's going on. So we don't know, and we're just expected to go along with everything and not ask any uncomfortable questions. Skylar, that was her name. Pete says, let's talk about Iran and what's going on in the United States. Well, not quite in the United States yet. We have to get through some NATO stuff first. But Pete Hegseth, this is the Defense Secretary of the United States, shares Donald Trump's tweet. Based on everything we've seen, and I've seen it all, Trump says, our bombing campaign obliterated Iran's ability to create nuclear weapons. Our massive bombs hit exactly the right spot at each target and worked perfectly. The impact of the bombs is buried under a mountain of rubble in Iran, so anyone who says the bombs were not devastating is just trying to undermine the president and the success of the mission, Hegseth told the outlet. And I think that's kind of funny. And the reason I think it's funny is because I was saying, like, there wasn't a blip of nuclear stuff. There doesn't seem to be nuclear fallout that anybody's talking about. Remember after Fukushima, people were saying, oh, the dolphins and whales are reading lots of nuclear fallout in the ocean and stuff. People are very concerned. And from what I can tell, nothing happened. Like, we're 15 years on from that now or something like that. And I don't hear much about Fukushima. Maybe I'm wrong. Send me information on the damage Fukushima's done, right? But at this point in time, it doesn't seem like it's done a whole lot of damage. So all of that, me saying, well, there's no spikes, there's no anything. They were saying that they could read the radiation from the fish. They were saying they could read the radiation in California. And I thought to myself, maybe this is just California sniffing its own farts. Like, I don't know. I don't know about this. So I think that who knows what happened in Iran? Did they destroy the nuclear program? Did they destroy the air shafts, and so rendering the building unusable and therefore the nuclear program uncontinuable? I have no idea. I don't know at all. I expressed doubt because, well, I'm a guy in my garage, and from what I can see, who knows, right? But I think it's interesting that Trump is like, don't you be doubtful about this. So I don't know. Interesting, right? Notable that he's saying it worked. It's super duper worked. Don't even question it. If you question it, New York Times, you're the real enemy. Interesting. Tristan says, Trump just shared this. So this is funny. Michael says, this post is hilarious. It achieves at least 3 strategic objectives and reminds me of a delightful incident from the life of Julius Caesar we'll discuss on the show tomorrow. And so this is, Trump shared this on Truth Social, according to these guys. And I'm sorry, I have not checked. I'll double check while the video is playing. But this is Bomb Iran.
Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran. Bomb, bomb, Iran. What country's got a feeling really hit the ceiling? Bomb, Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran. Went to a mosque, gonna throw some rocks. Tell the Ayatollah, gonna put you in a box. Bomb, Iran. Bomb, 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 Iran. Sam's getting pretty hot. Time to turn Iran into a parking lot. Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 Iran, bomb, 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 Iran.
Just keeps going.
It's got a feeling really in the ceiling. Bomb Iran, bomb, 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 bomb.
There you go. So interesting. Trump sharing that is pretty interesting stuff, right? And it took me a minute to pull this up, so I'm scrolling down Truth Social now to see if I can find it. But if I was not live streaming, I would pause it. Oh yeah, I found it. It's certainly a real post. Okay, so confirmed. Haha, there it is. I can't put it up right now. It's too fast. Here is NATO. The NATO meetings started yesterday, and Zelensky showed up in a suit. America AF says Zelensky wore a suit today because he knew Trump was already mad at him. So there you go. Zelensky's showing up to. It's funny, during the Democrats' reign, we see Beyonce on the red carpet. With Trump, it's NATO, right? And Zelensky, and like, it almost sounds.
Good evening.
Almost sounds like the people are going to talk about who he's wearing as he's walking in, right? There's the red carpet right there. So very interesting stuff with NATO. They have a big family photograph, and Desiree notices that Keir Starmer gets the back of Trump on the way out, right? So they take the picture, Trump's in the middle, and they all walk in, right? Trump's the last line to walk in. They have a picture together. Trump's standing next to Mark Rutte, and you can see here, and Keir Starmer. And then at the end, Trump starts to file out. Carney's on the far left side. Carney's here. Carney's here. So the Brits are noticing that Trump didn't talk to Starmer, and they're saying this is a snub, and Starmer's embarrassed by this, and this is, a very, very public snub. I just thought they were leaving the stage, but whatever. Could be. Who knows? And Concerned Citizen says, many people believe that an unusual alliance has been secretly formed for years to truly dismantle and take down the globalist deep state NWO operation once and for all. So yesterday I was talking about how the Iran thing could be seen one way, like the traditional way, or it could be seen that Trump knew Iran was really being run by 3-letter agencies as a rogue state that is an owned asset, right? And he knows that they're not going to do certain things, or they don't have the capability to do certain things. And so he went after them to basically say, like, do your worst, because if you do your worst, I'm going to destroy you, or you can sign this deal and it'll be peace. But it neutered Iran's ability to saber rattle, essentially. And so I've speculated, and I asked my dad, this is a few years ago, what if Trump's working with Putin to take down the deep state that's taken over, like the communist deep state that's taken over the United States and the world, right? What if that's what's happening? Is Trump a traitor for working with Russia and China to do that? Or is that what an American president should do to restore the Constitution and restore the freedom and independence of the United States? I don't know. But other people have noticed this, and I think that it's worth mentioning. Here's Trump and Putin and Trump and Xi, and Trump has talked about his good relationship and so on and so forth. Plausible. Is it real? Is it 100% for really, really real? I have no idea. But here's some speculation about Trump and Putin and Xi and what they're up to with regards to the power structure that was very, very solid up till, I guess, 2016. And now, who knows? A couple of balls are in the air. We could see some changes here. Here's this. I don't know that we need Thunderstruck, but it's Putin and Trump shaking hands, Putin and Xi. And this is when Trump went to China. This is, I think, the king of Saudi Arabia. And when Trump, and this is North Korea, during Trump's first term, he did the sword dance in Saudi Arabia, and there was a leadership change. There's volume here now. So
talk about numbers of troops or our plans for further military activities. Conditions on the ground, not arbitrary timetables, will guide our strategy from now on. America's enemies must never know our plans or believe they can wait us out. I will not say when we are going to attack, but attack we will.
So there you go.
What did you mean by calm before the storm yesterday? What did you mean by that?
Thank you very much.
There you go. Calm before the storm. Well, you'll find out. Maybe. We'll see. We're in some ways, I think we're running out of time. In some ways, I think that the time is evaporating for Trump because he's maybe getting caught up in Middle Eastern wars. But hey, look at that. Not so much. If they could catch him up in a Middle Eastern war, then his time evaporates and it's gone, right? Because the war is every other day, and then you you lose focus on the domestic stuff, and then it's the foreign war and the regime change and everything like that. It tripped up a whole bunch of presidents, but it seems like Trump isn't being caught up with that, and so we'll see if he's able to accomplish the draining of the swamp that was promised in 2015, 2016. Here's another. I think that I've shown this before. This looks old, but maybe this is new. Paul says it's about to get spicy. Homan hints that arrests are coming for government officials in sanctuary cities after Trump's executive order. Homan did the same thing before the New Mexico and Wyoming judges were arrested. He warned us it was coming. Look at the grin. He can barely hold it in. So here we go.
So the president signed an executive order just this week threatening to defund sanctuary cities for their policies. Why not just arrest the leaders who are harboring and shielding illegal aliens, actually terrorists, from deportation?
Wait to see what's coming.
So the president.
Wait till you see what's coming, he says. I like Homan. I think he's a very interesting choice, and I think he doesn't give a shit in a way that Trump circa 2016 and like Trump circa yesterday was. Roz alert. We're talking about the USA now. Says Zohan Mabdini has officially won the New York City primary mayoral race. So the mayor of New York is still Eric Adams. There wasn't a mayoral race that a Shiite Muslim just won. That's not. I think he's Shiite Muslim. But the primary, this guy is going to be facing Eric Adams in the next mayoral election, which may be later this year. I'm not sure. 2022 was when he was put in. This year, next year. So very interesting about that, right? Zohan Mamdini, and that's the mayor of New York. And so Alex Brenson says the only good thing about tonight is that Andrew Cuomo got what he deserved. So this guy's emailing Alex saying incredible piece, or not emailing, texting, I guess. Thanks, he's going to win. So Alex thinks he's going to win the primary, I guess. And the person he's texting says, I'm so happy. And Alex says, it's not funny. The city will be miserable. And the people who voted for him and the ones who will get the shaft. The rich can always move. Municipal grocery stores, it's a bad joke. Well, no, it's a good joke, he says. The guy responding, I really just want Cuomo to lose in the most humiliating fashion possible. And my gosh, this is that. And Alex says, true. You need to not forget how awful he is. So Cuomo's terrible. This guy's better. The Muslim from I don't even know where he is. Indian Muslim. Weird, right? Crazy town. Nick says, I never thought I'd say it, but Mayor Eric Adams is the only hope for New York City. The economic epicenter of the United States cannot be run by a Muslim Ugandan communist like Zohan Memnindi. I'm getting his name terribly wrong. I'm sorry. This impacts all of America. Vote Eric Adams for New York City mayor in November. Yeah, I'm not even really sure, other than completely rigging the elections, which is absolutely not above them. They will definitely rig elections to put in their preferred candidate, for sure, 100%. But I really don't understand. Like, I don't think that the other guy is appealing compared to Eric Adams, who's been the mayor for the last, since 2022. I don't know, man. It's very interesting. We'll see how rigged the elections are if this guy wins the New York mayorship. Here's Mega Beer. Now, Trump doesn't drink, right? So it's interesting. But Mega Beer says, Friday night lights, backyard barbecues, cold beer on the tailgate. We're not launching a product. We're reviving a feeling. Mega Beer for the America you remember. So it's like a Colbert Report beer, right? So good, I guess. I hope it's good and it's not like owned by some woke person who's going to have Dylan Mulvaney hawking this in a month, right? Like, it's totally within the realm of possible that they put out a product like this just to demoralize you, right? Switch it up in a month. Here is Retard Finder, and this guy's responding to Candace Owens talking about pro-Israeli bots, and she says, first thing I've seen in a while that has united Trump's base is Trump talking trash about Israel on camera. It's just a fact that everyone worldwide has Israel victim fatigue. And that's the motivation for Retard Finder to respond. He says, there's a serious amount of pro-Israel bot accounts with America first in their bio. They attack anyone who's even slightly critical of anything Israel. I didn't understand this only a month ago. Then I was constantly called an anti-Semite for the smallest thing. They came at me constantly, even though I said nothing. Now I'm starting to notice. So the same MO plays out with people it's meant to herd you. It's like a sheep herding dog. So if you say something and they don't want you to say that thing, they'll attack you. And it's the same with PPC versus CPC. There are bot accounts. There are swarming people who, if you say, oh, well, here's a counter position that the PPC holds that you CPC people might find interesting, then you'll get a bunch of bot accounts that attack you for daring to post that on a CPC account, period. And that's meant to silo the two parties to separate parts of the room so you can't see how much you actually agree. You galvanize the one group against the other group, and then they can never work together and become united, right? And so it's just interesting to me that these bots are used to make sure that division, that wedge, continues to be driven, right? And it's the same MO. They're doing it here to make sure that people don't question certain things, right? Like, these are the things you have to believe, and if you don't believe them, don't bother talking about it because we're going to browbeat you into submission. It's the same in Canada. If you dare to go outside of the approved talking points, you'll get bot accounts swarm you. You'll get no growth on your social media. You'll get all sorts of negative consequences, but it's meant to stop you from being outside of the lines. It's meant to bring you back into the approved narrative. And it's just interesting to note, right? I just find it very interesting that these tactics are used across different conflicts, different wedges, to make sure people are on the approved narrative and not outside of it. And that stuff just attracts my attention, interests me in how people fall for it and don't see it, interests me that you can program for a block of people and get 80% of them. And the 20% feel marginalized, even though that 20% who don't see it and don't follow along represent, I think, the will of the majority, because the people who are following along don't actually believe in it. They're just doing what they're told. If they were to do what they believe in, they'd align with the 20%, right? And I think that would probably be a strong 60%. But because of the artificial push and the constructed narrative and the fact that people get pushed back into the narrative instead of being allowed to question it, results in this 80-20, and they don't care. They'll just continue because they have that power. And we don't have the power to stop it. But if the propaganda turned off and people were allowed to challenge this, it would stop very quickly. COVID they couldn't even manufacture that 80%. They couldn't do that. They couldn't manufacture it, so it failed, right? And so I just find it interesting how well it works, even if you know. But if you know, you're inoculated from it a little bit. So that's why they silence people like me. Here is RFK Jr. is calling out members of Congress who are owned by Big Pharma. So he says, you, Senator, I think a senator or maybe congressman, I don't know, took $2 million from Big Pharma, so I don't trust you anymore. I don't trust your opinions anymore, says RFK Jr. So this is fun, right? This is good stuff. Here we go.
And I'll address you, Congressman Pallone. 15 years ago, you and I met. You were at that time a champion for people who had suffered injuries from vaccines. You were very adamant about it. You were the leading member of Congress on that issue. Since then, you've accepted $2 million from pharmaceutical companies in contribution, more than any other member of this committee. And your enthusiasm for supporting the old ACIP committee, which was completely rife and pervasive with pharmaceutical conflicts, seems to be an outcome of those contributions.
Mr. Chairman, point of order. Point of order.
The chair recognizes
Point of order. The
Dr.
gentleman is impugning the reputation of a member of Congress.
Stop the clock. Can you stop the clock for a second? Can you state the point of order?
The guy wasn't even paying attention. He was like, wasn't even listening.
Yeah. He was impugning Mr. Pallone's
Mr. Chairman, I didn't hear it. Did the gentleman?
Oh, you weren't paying attention. That's why.
Well, it's hard to pay attention here when we're not getting any responses.
Okay.
He's like, well, you're right. I wasn't paying attention, but the reason is because you guys aren't answering the questions. I love politics because it's so funny. The last couple of tabs for today. We've almost gone all the way through June without talking very much about anything LGBT, and that's good. And Charlotte's been paying attention to, over in the UK, to a whole bunch of local governments spending money on refugees and LGBT stuff, refugees welcome and LGBT stuff. And I find it interesting, again, that this 80-20 rule, you're not allowed to go outside the lines, you're not allowed to question outside the lines. LGBT inclusivity means everybody except you, right? And I mean, like, obviously, if you're straight, that doesn't include you. So that's most people. And so it's weird, right? So this inclusivity push is very exclusive and exclusive to being gay. But it's okay. You can become gay if you want to be. No thanks. But what if becoming gay meant you could have room at a retirement home? Yeah, that's what they're doing in England. Manchester City Council says the UK's first gay majority older person's housing is now on site in Whalley Range, providing more options for older LGBT. You know how when you walk into a primary school and you can smell lunches? I would not want to walk in and smell whatever is. No, I wouldn't want to go in. I wouldn't want to walk in there. Why? Amelia says, when will there be a majority ginger old person home? Inclusivity fail, right? Very good question. Good question. So fundamentally, this whole push for inclusivity is very exclusive, and this kind of crap is justified, and we allow it, but we shouldn't. But we only allow it because of the way they structure the narrative and the way they structure the public square gives them a lot of control to say, this is outside of what we want you to think. And so we're going to minimize everything to do with this opinion, and we're only going to push the positive, period. And isn't that wild? I think that's just incredible that we tolerate it and that it works so well. The last tab for today is, I've been talking about predictive programming. I've been talking about Matt Groening's Freemason, right? The first episode of Futurama featured a suicide pod. The Simpsons have predicted the future multiple times with lots and lots of, cutscenes and little episode asides and all sorts of stuff. So this is NAS, I guess, going through a whole bunch of times The Simpsons predicted the future. Now, do you think it's just coincidence? Do you still believe in those? I think it's an interesting thread, so I'll leave it up. Like, you can check it out. The link should be in the description. The link is in the description in the paid show, so apologies if it's on YouTube or something like that. I don't know if the link makes it to that one. I don't think it does. But I find it interesting how they can show you on popular television shows what they're planning on doing, And again, we think, man, that's eerily similar to reality. Do you think it was a coincidence? And most people go, yeah, Occam's razor, it's a coincidence for sure. And I mean, the razor I apply is, yes, they hate you. Yes, they're messing with you. Yes, they're teabagging the crap out of you to show you what they're doing. And they don't care if you notice. And it seems like, I mean, just look at what they did with COVID and everything since COVID. It seems like the bad policies are leading us to where we are. Where we are is not where we were. Where we were is a free society-ish, where people could afford housing and they weren't being actively replaced so they could notice. I think they were probably being replaced, but we weren't being as actively replaced as we are now. The jets are on, right? Like the accelerator's been hit. And so now we're in a very, very different place, and we're not allowed to notice it. And we're not allowed to figure out a way out. And that's concerning. So I don't know what's going to happen next. Maybe we should watch The Simpsons to find out. Anyway, that's enough out of me. Thanks for watching, everybody. Thanks for your support, and have a wonderful, wonderful day.